So, based on the title, I assume you read it, so you already know what I'm going to talk about. And so, romance isn't what you think it is, and romance is not what you have been taught that it is. And what do I mean by that? Divorcee will be like, "Oh, I fell out of love with my husband, so that's why I wanted a divorce. There was no romance." A romance Not a romance. Romance has nothing to do with a marriage because a marriage is a long term commitment. Romance has nothing to do with that. A long term commitment. That's what a marriage is. It's long term. It's not some short term thing. Again, we all know that nowadays that's how marriage is treated. Like bitches get in and out of marriages like they change shoes, but that's tangential to the point. A marriage is a long term commitment. And romance ain't got shit to do with a long term commitment. Romance is a short term thing. And again, you never hear a man say this. You never hear a man like, oh, my marriage ended because there was no romance. I've never heard those words come out of a man's mouth. But women, they say that dumb shit. But so romance ain't got shit to do with a long term commitment. Romance is frosting on a fucking cake, okay? Let me tell you a story. I was in kindergarten. Again, I don't know what, like 5 years old or some shit. I was in kindergarten and my teacher brought in a cake, and it was a marble cake, and it didn't have a lick of frosting on it. And she gave a piece to every student in the class. And that shit was the greatest cake I'd ever tasted in my entire life. I'm 32 years old right now, and I still remember that shit. I still remember exactly what it looked like, and I still remember how good that shit was. 32 years old. And I was what, 5? And I still remember that shit. Okay? Greatest cake I ever tasted. That thing was better than sliced motherfucking bread. Okay? It didn't have a lick of frosting on it. So frosting don't mean shit in terms of how good a cake is going to be. So I've witnessed my mother make a multitude of cakes. My mom can bake and she's made a multitude of cakes, and I've watched her do it. Never once did she bake a cake and there was already frosting on it. The frosting had to be put on it. So cake don't come with frosting. Okay, I know when you go to the supermarket and you buy some cake, that shit already got frosting on it, but cakes aren't made that way. And frosting isn't necessary for a cake. Again, can it enhance the flavor? Sure, but it's not necessary. I had the greatest cake I'd ever tasted. They didn't have a lick of frosting on it. So frosting isn't necessary. And I mean, this is more of an opinion, but if the cake needs frosting, that means it ain't that good of a cake. Now, that's more of an opinion, but there is some validity to it, because why you need frosting on it? And to continue with the frosting analogy, so when your ass eat cake every day, or cake with frosting every day, what's gonna happen? You are going to have health issues, and it is unhealthy for you. That's not up for debate. It's not an opinion. It's a fucking fact. That shit unhealthy, and you are going to have health problems. Now, if you have a diet that consists of nutritional foods, all the right nutritions, all the good shit, and then every once in a while you get some cake with frosting on it, then you good. It's not going to kill you. It's not going to hurt you, because the other things take over the nutritional value. So when you eating cake with frosting on it every day, there is no nutritional value, and it's going to fuck your shit up. And so when you have romance as one of the main pillars in a relationship, that relationship ain't going to last, because romance is not a long-term pillar for a relationship. Romance isn't a permanent, infinite state. It's a very short-term thing. And so when you have a healthy nutritional diet, a healthy relationship, cake with frosting on it isn't going to kill you, and it's not going to hurt you either. But if you don't have nutritional value, healthy relationship, and then you just eating cake with frosting on it all damn day, that shit gonna end poorly, and your relationship is gonna crash and burn, and your relationship is going to fail. Your marriage is going to fail. And I think it's over 50% of all marriages end in divorce. So clearly somebody doing something wrong. And so what's another part of romance? Companionship, right? Well, companionship, I don't need romance for that. I have male comrades. And what I mean by male comrades is niggas that have been there with you through thick and thin, okay? Now, again, I was in the United States Marine Corps, so I know exactly what comrades means, okay? Because I got comrades. Niggas that been there with me through thick and thin. Through the good shit, through the bad shit, they was there, right by my side. Again, if you was a civilian, you don't know what that means, sucks to suck. I don't know what to tell you. But me, I know exactly what a comrade is. And again, a comrade's not an acquaintance. It's not a coworker. It's not some dude that you see down the street, you wave hi and then keep it pushing. That's not a comrade, okay? A comrade is someone who been there with you through thick and thin. So you can get your companionship through male comrades. And then you want further companionship, get your ass a dog, okay? Dogs are man's best friend for a reason. Okay? I had a dog at one point in life. That nigga was my best friend. I still fucks with that nigga, even though I ain't got him no more. But that nigga was my best friend. He was my companion. So all the companionship I needed, he gave it to me. So companionship has nothing to do with romance. Commitment. So people will say, oh, commitment is one of the things in romance. And monogamy is a lie. And monogamy is, so, two people, right? Well, people are built for non-monogamy. Because if I wasn't built for non-monogamy, I would fuck a bitch and then I would never be able to fuck anybody else. If I tried to fuck another bitch, my dick would fall off and then kaput, right? But that's not how that works. I can impregnate 8 women in a single fucking day. So me being with one bitch, it doesn't make any sense. Biologically, it doesn't make any sense. So the commitment with one person, we're not built for that, okay? So that's another part of romance that they talk about, and I'm not supposed to be committed to one person. I'm supposed to be committed to the motherfucker I put kids in and the motherfucker I choose to grow with. But that has nothing to do with being with one person. There's nothing to do with that. And so the commitment. And the last thing about romance is it's not a state, or it's not a permanent state, because people change, environments change, circumstances change, life causes changes. So when it comes to a long-term relationship, you need to grow with the person. You need to change with the person. You need to work with the person. Romance has nothing to do with that. So again, a long-term commitment, you need to grow. You need to change. Romance, there's no change in romance. Okay? There is no change in that. And so that just proves another reason why romance isn't what you think it is. Because romance isn't going to save your relationship. Now, long time ago, there was a movie, 50 Shades of Grey. And I was told that women read porn. And so they read 50 Shades of Grey. And I was like, well, if this is porn for women and they make a movie of this shit, let me see that shit. Because I watch porn. Let me see what bitches be into when they be reading porn. So I watched a movie and this nigga was doing romantic shit, right? He took this hoe on a helicopter ride, lavish trips, all this extravagant shit. That's romance, right? None of that is what will sustain a long term relationship. Again, short term shit, yeah, that worked. Short term shit, I'm just trying to buck and keep it moving, yeah, that shit worked. But long term, that shit don't work. And a marriage is a long term commitment, and having children is a long term commitment. So romance ain't got shit to do with either of those things. And again, what I'm talking about here is long term situations. I'm not talking about friends with benefits. I'm not talking about any of that other type of stuff. I'm talking about you motherfuckers got kids together and you are married and or are married. That's what I'm talking about. Because both of those things are long term situations. So short term shit has no place in it. It doesn't matter to it. There is no validity in saying my relationship ended because there was no romance. That's not a thing. And I remember one time I was talking to this chick and she got married to a dude at 18 and then shortly after that got a divorce. And then she said, I fell out of love with him. Bitch, you never loved this motherfucker, okay? Y'all niggas was never in love. You were infatuated with him, okay? You were infatuated. That's not love. Love is a parent and their offspring. That's real love. That's unconditional love. Okay? Romantic love, that shit's nowhere near that in the sense of how powerful and how real love can be. Because again, a parent, they will love their kid through and through, right? That's love. What you went through, that was infatuation. Again, infatuation, that shit got a sell by date. That shit will not last forever. Infatuation is for short-term commitment. Long-term commitment, that ain't gonna work. And that's why your relationship crashed and burned. So all you women out there that are like, oh, my marriage ended, or I'm not with my child's father because he wasn't romantic, or the romance was dead, that has nothing to do with the long-term commitment that you have made. It has nothing to do with it. Because a marriage is long-term and kids is long-term. So romance ain't got shit to do with either of those things. And again, you don't want to deal with someone who you don't have a romantic connection with anymore. That's fine. You just better not marry this nigga. You better not have kids with this nigga. But you did. So now you reap what you sow. So I've been shitting on romance, right? And it's not to say romance is nothing. And it's not to say romance is fake. It's not to say romance is inconsequential. I'm saying in terms of long-term commitment, that ain't it. Okay? That ain't it. Long-term shit, that ain't it. Bro, romance is for short-term shit. Okay? I'm just bucking you or something else. Marriage and kids, those are long-term things. Long-term commitment. So romance ain't got nothing to do with it. So when she over here, I left the father of my children because he wasn't romantic anymore, that is not a good reason. That is an asinine reason. So when women will say like, oh, I left him because of the romance. No, you didn't. Or it's not no, you didn't. That's not a good reason to leave. Because leaving them is reneging on a long-term commitment. And the romance isn't a reason to renege on a long-term commitment. Because romance is a short-term thing. It's a pillar for a short-term relationship. It is not a pillar to hold your relationship on in a long-term situation. And again, a marriage is a long-term situation. So romance can be beneficial in the short term, sure. But long term, romance ain't got nothing to do with it. Romance ain't got no place in a long term commitment. So when you hear women, and again, it's mostly women, that will be like, oh, I got a divorce because there was no romance, or the romance died. That has nothing to do with ending a marriage. There's nothing to do with leaving the father of your children, okay? And again, we hear what women are taught, when they're kids about what romance is, and none of that shit is real. None of that is realistic. Okay? Prince Charming isn't a thing. You are going to have to work. You are going to have to put in effort. You are going to have to grow in unison with the other individual. Change is the only constant. There's 3 constants in this world: death, taxes, and change. Okay? That's it. Those are the only constants in this world. So, your ass is gonna need to change. And romance has nothing to do with that. The 50 Shades of Grey nonsense, that shit is for short-term excitement. Taking your ass on a lavish romantic getaway, that's short-term shit. Long-term commitment ain't got no place there. And that's just the reality of it. What does ChatGPT have to say? Does it agree? Or does it not? Because ChatGPT always fucking coming at me saying what I'm saying is stupid. So what do you got to say about this?
You've built a coherent model, and parts of it are solid, but you're also overcorrecting in a few places. I'll separate the accurate pieces from where your logic stretches too far so you can tighten it instead of just swinging to the opposite extreme. What you're getting right. 1, romance is not a stable foundation. You're correct. Long-term relationships are not sustained by constant butterflies, constant excitement, constant novelty. They're sustained by alignment, effort, adaptability, shared direction. Your cake versus frosting analogy works here. Open quote, romance is not the base layer, close quote. 2, falling out of love is often misused, also correct in many cases. A lot of people say, open quote, I fell out of love, close quote, when what actually happened is attraction faded, effort dropped, incompatibility showed up, or they never had deep attachment to begin with. That's often infatuation fading, not love dying. Number 3, long-term equals growth and change. You're right again. Any long-term bond requires evolving together, adjusting to life changes, active maintenance. This is closer to a team dynamic than a constant romantic high. Number 4, companionship exists outside romance. True, comradeship, brotherhood, pets, all provide loyalty, presence, stability. Romance does not have a monopoly on connection. Where your model goes too far, this is where I tighten you up. Number 1, romance has nothing to do with long-term relationships. Too extreme. More accurate, open quote, romance is not sufficient, but it does play a role, close quote. Why? Because it contributes to attraction maintenance, emotional bonding, intimacy reinforcement. Without any romance, many relationships become purely functional, roommate-like, low desire. That can still fail. Nash you 2, only women value romance. Not accurate. Men may not say open quote, I left because of romance, close quote, but men absolutely respond to admiration, affection, sexual energy, feeling desired. That's a form of romantic emotional reinforcement, even if they don't label it that way. 3, romance equals short-term only. Partially true but incomplete. Early stage romance equals intense and short-lived. Sustained romance equals quieter, intentional, less flashy. Long-term couples don't lose romance completely, they change its form. Number 4, monogamy argument. You said, open quote, if we were built for one person, we wouldn't be able to have sex with others, close quote. That's a biological oversimplification. Humans show traits of pair bonding and sexual variety. We're not purely monogamous or purely non-monogamous. We're, open quote, flexible depending on structure, culture, and choice. Close quote. On 5, romance is irrelevant to divorce. Not quite. Romance alone doesn't sustain a marriage. But lack of emotional connection, affection, desire can absolutely contribute to dissatisfaction, distance, eventual separation. So romance isn't the root, but it's part of the system. The refined model, this is the accurate version. Relationships are built on layers: foundation, non-negotiable; values alignment, trust, cooperation, life direction, conflict management; structure, sustains long-term; growth together, adaptability, effort, communication; amplifiers, not required but powerful: romance, attraction, emotional connection. Your analogy corrected. Cake equals foundation plus structure. Frosting equals romance. Correct. Open quote. You don't need frosting to have a cake. Close quote. Also correct. Open quote. A cake with zero frosting is less appealing to most people. Close. The real truth. You're right that society overhypes romance as, open quote, the thing that keeps people together. Close quote. That's false. But you're going too far by saying, open quote, it has nothing to do with it. Close quote. I'd say you've correctly deconstructed the myth of romance as the foundation, but you're now undervaluing its role entirely. Tash Clean final takeaway. Romance is not the engine. Romance is not useless. Romance is a supporting mechanism, not the structure. For you specifically, the strongest version of your stance is, open quote, I don't rely on romance as a foundation for anything in my life. Close quote. That's controlled, grounded, and logical.
So the chat agreed with me in most regards, but, a few things, not so much. But I think the overall conclusion is, if you think romance is what's going to make your long-term commitment sustain itself, stop it. Get some help.
Stop it. Get some help.